Guys, there we go. Hello. Now I'm unmuted. Go figure. There's always one more thing in my OBS setup. Wanted to go through a refresh, so it decided to change all my settings, which makes it officially a Monday at this point. But if we can get through this, that means we can get through anything. OBS will not stop us. I'm so excited, as I am every week, to be back here with you all on a Monday to just have the chance to be a part of the community that we have here. It's so important to have a place where we have the chance to hear, to listen, to empathize, to learn more about the world around us, especially this space that we have that builds relationships, that creates identity, that has community, that helps us feel like we belong somewhere. This is such a big world, and it's easy to feel small. I was just meeting with a whole new batch of students today as they were coming through, and I just thought there's so many people, and I am just one person. But it's so amazing to think about how we as individuals and whoever we're connecting with, however many people that we're connecting with, have the capacity to showcase kindness, to showcase empathy, and to support one another to be the best selves that we can be. Whether it's here in the gaming world with the gamers or wherever we find ourselves, that we have the chance to always be these positive forces of good. And I feel like every time we come here on Monday, we just have amazing guests week after week after week that remind us of all of these wonderful opportunities we have to be good people. And when it really boils down to that, right, no matter what platform we're on, we just want to be good people to ourselves and to others. I'm so excited that we get to be here and we get to refill our cup, refill our energy, so that way when we approach the rest of the week, Monday energy behind us, right, emails all answered, that we get to be in a space of positivity, that we get to be thoughtful, that we get to be kind, we get to be purposeful in all of our interactions. I know it's easy to think like, what are these big things that we're doing? But it's all these small moments, how we say hello to one another, who we spend time with, how we check in, all right, that really builds meaningful connections. And I'm so glad you all join us week after week to have these opportunities. So let's go ahead and dive in. I've been talking way too much at this point, so if you all be ever so kind to help me welcome our wonderful guest for this evening from Trans Lifeline, Kafele. Say hello.
How's it going?
Great. How are you doing?
I'm good. Feeling the Monday energy, but really excited to be here.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us the short bio about you.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm a professional fundraiser. I've been doing this for tons of nonprofits since I was like 17 years old. Originally from New York City, but Dallas, Texas is home now. Yeah, really excited to be here today to talk a little bit more about my work and about how TL helps support trans people in the gaming and online spaces.
I love that. So from here on, we're just going to call it TL, right? It sounds cooler, right? I'm so terrible with acronyms. I guarantee you're going to say TL later on and be like, what does TL stand for? My Monday brain will hit so hard at that moment. But right, so like this is when you have like little shortcut words like that, it's because it's so integrated in your life. How long have you been with Trans Lifeline?
So like 4 years now, actually. Yeah, so I was originally a consultant for Trans Lifeline. And so I was working kind of externally. I was running my own um, consultancy firm,
Mm-hmm.
which supports grassroots and social justice organizations, and got introduced to Trans Lifeline and the amazing work that they do.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just over time, I've just like really believed in the mission of the organization and like in this moment of like such repressive like attitudes towards trans folks like externally, like whether it's politically or socially, like
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was like a really awesome opportunity to like really invest more time with the organization. So I became a full-time staff member
Wow.
about a year and a half ago. And
Dang.
yeah, I love working with them. It's an amazing organization, and I'm really like lucky and blessed to be part of it.
I love that. So it's kind of like stepping into the waters, seeing the mission, seeing the actions, and you're like, I need to be a part of this full time. I want to be fully
Yeah.
behind this mission. But that's so important, right? Especially when we think about nonprofit organizations. It's very different than why some people choose to work in other places, right? There's a lot like I used to work with accountants and I'm like, I love accounting, right? There's not the same energy that we might see
Yeah.
in nonprofit spaces where there's a lot of heart, there's a lot of passion, and there's a lot of stories behind that particular mission. Why? I of course you referenced the current political and social climate that we're in right now, which unfortunately is incredibly hostile to trans folks on the whole front, especially within the United States. But I want to know for you, why was this a particular cause that you're like, listen, this is an organization that one, I want to be a part of, and two, that I think is doing a really good job here?
Yeah, of course. That's a great question. For me, it was one of the first organizations that I saw that was like really committed to like building community internally.
Mm,
So like Trans Lifeline is a trans-led organization and they support trans folks explicitly. Oftentimes with orgs, like you'll find that that's like what they say, and like when you dive a little deeper, like sometimes it's not 100% like how they operate.
right.
But it really is the case with them. I am the only non-trans person on staff.
Wow.
And so it
Mhm.
was really like, and like everyone was so welcoming to me, like to enter that space, which I really appreciated both like as a consultant, but also like as a staff member. And work-wise, yeah, I just love the idea that birthed the organization. So
Mhm.
um, Trans Lifeline is really centered around helping trans folk thrive. And so it really started as a response of like trans people not getting their needs met when reaching out to the traditional forms of resources. Um,
Mm.
and so it started, and it still runs today, but it started as a crisis hotline.
Oh.
And so it was, and it still is, a completely trans run crisis hotline for trans folks.
Wow.
So whenever someone calls, they're speaking to another trans person. And so that
Oh.
allows them to have someone to talk to with the same lived experience as them, who can really provide like the support and understanding and care that's like so unique to that experience and really needed to be able to like help people through tough times. So like
Mhm.
whether people are just like trying to like find out more information about themselves or maybe like a family member and trying to support them, or they're going through like a really tough time and like are actually calling for crisis, they
Mhm.
get that really personalized touch that
Yeah.
isn't available elsewhere. And then they also are the first and largest non-consensual um hotline. And so that means that like
Huh.
for trans people, they're like very over policed.
Mhm.
And so many other hotlines, if you call them and if you're in a state of crisis, they send, law enforcement or the police to like your location without your consent. And so Trans Lifeline was like one of the first orgs to like really buck that trend.
Yeah.
And they don't they aren't like, it doesn't immediately wire to the police or to like any law enforcement, so people can call and know that it's a truly safe space for them to like talk about what they're going through
Mhm.
without any of like criminalization or like unintended and unwarranted outcomes from just trying to get some help. And
Wow.
that really spoke really deeply to me,
Mhm.
and like really at the core of the work, just helping people in need. And so they've expanded and added more like wraparound services, which we can also talk about. But like that
Yeah.
was like the main thing that really like drew me to like how important that work is. And that was 4 years ago. And with
Mm.
everything that's happening now, it's only unfortunately become more timely for orgs like Trans Lifeline to exist. And so like I'm really excited to like be able to show up in this space as an ally and help support our
Mhm.
trans brothers sisters and siblings in need.
I love that. I'll be honest, I had no idea that most hotlines have, I guess, you choose the option to be able to call into emergency services like that, especially the police, when that can be a very terrifying experience, especially depending on where you live. Sometimes that can be much more contentious based on historic interactions,
Yeah.
which was a huge barrier for getting help, of being able to reach out. That's, I feel like, what is very surprising, that would have been a default, and Trans Lifeline was one of the very first to be like, no, we need to get rid of this obvious thing that would deter people from seeking help.
Yeah.
Wow.
Uh-huh. And we even like started some advocacy work so that we can be in coalition with other hotline partners and
Hmm.
other service providers to help them
Hmm.
also understand this framework and like really get them to change like how they've structured their hotlines to be able to like be
Hmm.
more open and safer for people. So we have a whole safe hotlines campaign that we're running really to help push other hotlines and also the federal hotline
Hmm.
that's just opening to be non-consensual as well. So police will only be and law enforcement would only be called if the person on the phone requests it.
And that's so important. How important is, yeah, just to think like I ask for it versus someone is calling it for me, and how much more
Yeah,
dangerous that is if someone calls it for me and I don't want it. Right?
yeah, sure. Or if you don't even know that it's coming.
Yes.
Um, so and for people who are experiencing like
Mhm.
whether it's a mental health crisis or just like a distressed emotional state, like that's something that like can really make a situation a lot more tense, especially if they're coming
Yeah.
from a marginalized background, right? So when
Yes.
you think about trans folks being like a marginalized community, if you're a trans person of color, like the intersectionality of that, if you're
Hmm.
a femme trans person, the intersectionality of that as well. So like it's really just making sure that people get the help that they need, the way that they need it and the way that they request it as well.
Yes. Yes. It's meeting on that individual's terms, right? And what they feel comfortable with. Because that's a huge vulnerable experience to even make that call in the first place. Right? To say,
Yeah.
I need to talk to someone. That's difficult. I mean, that's why we have the hotlines to try to minimize it. But even within those existing barriers, it shows an insightfulness that TL has. And I'm so glad that on top of all the other efforts, you're like, let's go help out the other hotlines as well because they need to get their act together. But this is many ways in which you all are setting the standard of what this needs to look like. And the underlying basis from all this is how you all are working to build trust. I think that seems so important. Talk to me about, for TL or individuals who use this particular hotline or the resources, how does trust play a factor in making sure that you can actually provide the resources that are needed in this space?
Yeah, for sure. Trust is the biggest factor.
Hmm.
For a lot of people, especially those who are just coming out or figuring out what they want to do, like
Right.
this is the most like internal thing that they've held for themselves in their life, right? And
Hmm.
so the spaces in which they choose to engage with that always have to be as welcoming and open and safe as possible for people to feel comfortable, even just seeking information beyond just being a crisis. Like if you just want to learn more about healthcare options, for gender affirming healthcare, anything
Yeah.
like that, you
Yeah.
know, in the internet age, it's very easy to like, for people to, get doxxed or terrible things to happen to them. And so we really try and put a major emphasis on like creating safe spaces, having like really great data collection standards, and things like that. So that when people call, whether it's just for additional information, to receive one of our micro grants, or any interaction with Trans Lifeline, they can trust that like their data and their information is safe and that it's a private,
Hmm.
confidential conversation.
Hmm. That's so important. Because you are right. It's an absolute internet age. There's a lot of danger to be had from that. Yeah, you're right. Like doxing. Doxing is terrifying when it happens to you and you don't know what's going on. And even other details I mean, if you have access to their internet details, it's also not hard to figure out then where they live, where they go to
Mhm.
school, where they work, right? Anything. There's a lot of personal information then that puts that person at risk. And unfortunately, that could also put at risk housing, employment, right? And how can you take care of yourself if you feel like your basic elements are at risk. Even your home life for a number of individuals, if they're still living at home with family, that can still
Yeah.
be a particularly dangerous situation, I imagine.
100%. Everyone's home situation is different, especially for young folks who are still like in the home with their families and like
Hmm.
not fully like, sustaining themselves. They may get outed in unsafe spaces, and so we never want
Hmm.
that to be the case.
Right.
And so everything that we do is like confidential with that in mind. And those are like the type of nuanced things that like I really appreciate about Trans Lifeline
Yeah.
because like being a trans ed organization, those conversations and those like ideas of how to structure support happen very naturally and organically, and like people know like what that experience was maybe like for them
Hmm.
or for people that they know and that they're in community with. So it's like we'll try our best to like prevent that from
Yeah.
happening to other folks when we provide services for them.
I love that. It's just thoughtfulness at every step of saying, what are the potential situations? What are the risks that are going to be at hand? And how do we anticipate and prepare against those to make this the safest space possible?
Yeah,
That's amazing.
exactly.
That's not easy to do. I mean, even in the organization where, of course, a majority of the individuals have gone through their own experience and transition and the relationships they've had, everyone's transitioning process can be very different. How do you all try to navigate or provide adaptability for all of these different needs or unique experiences, whether it's where they're at and the actual location or the legalities of it or what the unique needs are in that space? How do you find like the right resources for the right person?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. So, all of our hotline operators are trained to
Mm,
handle like certain circumstances. And so they have like the experience and know-how of how to deal with a lot of different things. We
mm,
also have an online repository and tool for like folks who maybe can't get on the phone.
mm,
That's on our website. And I encourage folks to check out our website, translifeline.org. um, and so there we house information that's like we
mhm,
source and vet regularly about like where folks are and like what is available resources to them. So like,
mm,
certain cities and states have like, more robust forms of healthcare or different resources that people can tap into.
mhm.
And so we try and provide tools so that people can look that up for their location and figure out what's available for them.
I love that because researching in and of itself can be a bit dangerous, as you mentioned, like leaving your own internet history trail. So to have, at least if I just visit one site, here's everything that I need, it makes it so much easier in that process, right? On top of everything else that they're going on and trying to manage, it's one less challenge that has to be provided. Now, admittedly, I'm really curious about the training that goes through. So if somebody wanted to be able to support in those sort of ways, what kind of training is expected to before someone hops on the phone?
Yeah, for sure. So there's an internal curriculum that everyone
Mhm.
goes through that
Ooh,
goes through all the steps of not only just operating the hotline, but like
yeah.
some pretty regular responses, how to handle things,
Mhm.
how to deal with escalations, things of that nature, so that hopefully everyone who is on the hotline is like well versed enough to handle those situations, and then so
Mhm.
they aren't put into like live
Yeah.
hotline calls until everyone's gone through the training.
Wow. I just think that's such a bold and wonderful endeavor. I already see myself being too weak for this. Like it's such an emotional experience. I feel like I'd be the one crying back at them. Like I would not be a great strength. I would not be a great pillar in that space because, right, it is vulnerable. Like individuals are sharing challenges that they're going through their life. They're seeking out help. And especially for, as you mentioned, a number or the people who are on the phone can empathize with the positioning of these transitioning individuals, right? That creates an even stronger connection on that. I would be an emotional mess. Others, I imagine, are much emotionally stronger than I am to be able to handle
Yeah.
that. But I want to applaud because that's difficult to do. I imagine in your curriculum. So I'm a teacher. I love when I hear like, "Oh, curriculum. Let's talk about it." which is not always the reaction of every teacher, I'm starting to learn. But it's also recognizing, not only do we say like, here are resources, here's key ways to navigate. Like if it was just that, I'm like, I love my fact sheet, I've got note cards, I could do that. But it's also learning the nuance of how I say things, what do I say and when, and knowing the steps. Like there's a lot more of the emotional management in this particular space than what you might find in other situations. How is that worked or handled in this? Because this is such a personable experience.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you're right. Like it is a really like tough thing to do to like be on the other end of the line
Mm-hmm.
and to help support folks who are in need. And so over the past couple of years, like Translate Fund has really like tried to also learn and listen from like the folks who are on the hotline to be able to help provide them better supports
Mm-hmm.
because it's a difficult job. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So yeah, it's like a very iterative process where we've kind of rolled out the curriculum, but there's always additions being made to it, and
Mm-hmm.
like we really want to help support the folks who are like really helping feed
Mm-hmm.
the work that we're doing. So it's definitely something that I think will be like a constant growing area for the
Yeah.
org. But that just shows like a commitment to like trying to learn.
Yes. I love that. I love to hear like a continually growing curriculum because I mean, we know the space is continually evolving and how we learn to connect and the resources provided continues to change. But even as we understand ourselves and we talk about it, there's emotional intelligence and history that we get to develop there that is so powerful in this space. Now, you said you really focus on the fundraising aspect. I
Yeah.
I am also impressed because that is sometimes difficult, right? Like even I know during the pandemic, every charity was like, "How do we fundraise money all of a sudden?" Like the most traditional forms really just kind of got turned upside down on how people were making asks, were seeking support. And I think this might be doubly difficult for trans life because who you're seeking donors with, unfortunately, may be not only just a miss, but sometimes downright difficult with some sponsors.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's like really similar to anything else. It's about finding community.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I love about TL is like um, it's very clear like who the organization is, what we stand for, and what we're about. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
there is no like middle ground.
Yeah.
Like either you're for it or you're not. But, sometimes I honestly appreciate. I would rather be in solidarity with a smaller group of like folks who are like really down to like
Mhm.
support the cause and really help folks who are in need, rather than organizations who are just doing it for like PR washing or anything like that. So like
Mhm.
internally, like worked on like really trying to be like selective about who, especially from the corporate side, like who we partner with and
Yeah.
things like that. But like we have an amazing community. So like most of our money raised is from small dollar donors, like either
Mm.
people donating directly, or we have an awesome community of online support
Mhm.
from people who do Twitch streams and throw fundraisers for us and do testifies for us. So like
Mhm.
that's really the lifeblood of our donor base, and like
Wow.
it's really like so community led that we're incredibly lucky to like have that status to be able to
Mhm.
lean on the community to help like feed the community and support the community.
I love this emphasis on community. Obviously, here at the Gamers, that's one of our focus areas as well, right? Building community that is meaningful, that has support for one another, that encourages voices, uplifting in this space. And so I love hearing, of course, how TL and you in particular leading a lot of these efforts to tap into these small communities where there are genuine conversations, where if there are questions, they're going to get answered, where there's a thorough understanding of TL, right? What you guys do. And it's not only informative, but it does raise funds. I'd love to hear about perhaps one of your favorite fundraising events that were hosted. Like, was it a Twitch stream? Was it somewhere else? Like, what was it? You're like, this I love. I'd love to see more along this lines.
For sure. So every year, we run an event called Trans Heart October. So
Mm.
in the month of October, we have a bunch of streamers do like either 24-hour streams, or we try and have like as much as we can, like to fill out the month. And it's so cool just seeing the community like
Mm-hmm.
come together in so many different spaces to like just support. And it's like, there'll be like the bigger folks who can like pull in like, a lot of money. But like what really gets me excited is seeing like the smaller, like just regular folks who are like, hey, I'm trying to pull together $500 for this really amazing organization I found, and get their friends to like put that together. Those gifts are like so meaningful because it's like truly like community led, and people who like are taking time out of their day, like regular
Mm-hmm.
folks who like maybe aren't professional gamers or anything. They're just doing this for fun, or
Yeah.
like they're so moved by our org and however they came across us and our information, that they like felt compelled to like take the time out to do that. And so
Aw.
yeah, it's really awesome. And so we've been like really trying to engage with our community a lot more, to be able to like support them the way that they support us. So yeah.
Yes, here, here. Every dollar counts. And it's so wonderful when you just see, yes, the activation of individuals just acting on their own, saying, like, I want to be a part of this. I found this. I love this. I love the mission. I'm going to do whatever I can right on this end. I think that's a beautiful appreciation, and also highlight what gaming community in particular has really championed, right? There's a lot of online communities here or there, but gaming is one of those interesting spaces where it's so kind. I try to think of like other online communities, and I don't think like I'm not gonna go to Reddit and find kindness. The Facebook groups I'm in are real interesting, so probably not. But in the gaming space, there's been this huge push of wanting to, well, one, recognizing how important community is and how important it is to have support and to be seen for who we are. And I think that really parallels in some ways the same community needs that trans individuals look like or look for, right? Even especially with TL, like that seems like a really great match of, we want communities to see us for who we are, to value who we are, and want to support who we are.
100%. And I think for a long time, like the gaming community got a bad rap because the loudest voices in the room,
Yeah.
were necessarily the best voices in the room. Like I grew up as like, a kid who like loved playing video games and still do to this day. And like, but who like our part of that world like wasn't really seen
Mm-hmm.
um for years, where I think is now there's like a real cultural awakening in space, and people made space and took space to say like, no, it doesn't all look like this, and there's room for all of us, like, whether it's black gamers, gamers of all different races, women gamers, trans gamers, like
Mm-hmm.
um gay gamers, queer gamers, whoever you are, like there is room in this community for you, and you can like find your people in it. And I really like love and appreciate that it's grown in that space.
That's right. Gaming is for everyone. I'm going to add one category in there where I feel like I most belong. It's for people who aren't actually good at video games, but still love it anyway.
Easy mode gamers are still welcome too.
Yeah, yeah. You don't have to be good at it to enjoy it.
For
so,
sure.
so you are a gamer. What are your go-to games? Where are you at?
Yeah, I've been rocking Overwatch 2 heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Love
That's
it.
that's been my biggest time suck right now.
Time
I am
suck.
a
Come
FIFA
on.
guy. No, I have so many games in my catalog, like single player games, that like I really want to get to. But like after work, it's so hard for me to like sit down and like deal with a story. Like I've been trying to play God of War Ragnarok since it's come out. And I just can't like find the time to just be like, all right, I need to like sit and like enjoy this. It's like this epic narrative because I'm like my brain's tired
Yeah.
after a day of work. I just want to shoot stuff. So
There are different
Overwatch,
needs. That's fair.
yeah,
That's fair.
fair. Yeah, so Overwatch and FIFA are like my main
Okay.
ones right now. But yeah, ever since I was a kid, my first system was a.
Hmm.
Still remember I got a Sega Genesis. I used to play
Ooh.
um, Sonic, obviously, Sonic Spinball, Golden Axe, like
Yeah.
those games.
Showing
And
your
then,
gaming credentials here.
yeah. I'm fully vetted. I've been around for a while. Yeah, then went to the PS1, then did the Dreamcast,
Yeah.
regular Xbox 360, and
Hmm.
now the Switch and the PS5.
That's a full collection right there. That is a full
Yeah.
collection. I think we're just missing like the Game Boy and GameCube, but I'm sure you had those at some
Oh,
point.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
see,
yeah, for
there it is.
sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I used to piss my mom off all the time with that little, like, light attachment on the Game Boy Color so I could, like,
Yes.
play Pokemon in bed. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes. Good.
I was still freezing batteries so I could sneak out, like, a couple like, 20 more minutes.
Well, one, you do need to finish Ragnarok because it is really good. So I'm going to
Okay.
shame you a little bit
Alright.
on that
That's
one.
I
But
appreciate that. I needed that external
come
motivation to
on.
do it. I would probably play tonight.
But two, so you have this gaming legacy. What was it like? I mean, to be able to bring TL onto the gaming space, be like, yeah, why aren't we on Twitch? Yes, we should be over on YouTube. Like, we need to be with these gamers and their communities that they're building up. What has that been like to be able to bring these two worlds that you have together?
You know what's crazy is this was here, like, before I started at Trans Lifeline, and that was, like, one of the most intriguing things about the fundraising department, like,
Hmm.
consulting with groups, throughout my entire career, I had
Yeah.
never worked with an org that had, like, a dedicated space for, like, e-gaming as a fundraising arm. And I was like, "This is so cool." And so, like, whenever I'm like so we do, like, activations in person, so we go to,
Hmm.
like, TwitchCon and like a bunch of different conventions and stuff. And like my friends are like, wait, you get to go to gaming conventions for work? I'm like, I know, right?
Yeah.
It's so yeah, no, it's really been like a
Hmm.
crazy like full circle moment for me because like things like that I always wanted to do as a kid.
Hmm.
And now I get to do it like with an amazing organization and like, kind of really like bring those two loves together. But
Yes.
yeah, it's really, really amazing seeing how Trans Lifeline has really like tried to grow and support online gaming. We have this really awesome platform peer to peer that we
Hmm.
are relaunching hopefully in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
So it is a site that allows people to self-identify across a variety of different
Hmm.
ways of self-identification, whether it's gender, sexuality, race, um, and then you can filter folks so you can find your community, so you can broadcast to people and really self-identify and like say that I'm here and I am a black gamer and like come check out my stuff because for whatever reason
Hmm.
sometimes marginalized people from marginalized communities don't get the same access and shine, so you're able to like really look for and seek out
Hmm.
folks. Um, and it's a safe community. Like you have to apply to get put on the platform and everything. So
Good.
everything is vetted and stuff like that. So like we really try and like keep it like as like tight knit as possible
Hmm.
to help build safe spaces for folks again.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's really like an incredible tool just to like really help build community as well. Like outside of just like we work with streamers that like fundraise for us, but like really to give something back to the community
Yes.
and to build those spaces, especially for trans folks, because like online is such a great space for people who,
Hmm.
especially if you're not in a, big city or, have access to a lot of people,
Yeah.
can be like hella lonely. So like they can find their tribe, they can find their people virtually.
Hmm.
And so it's really dope that TL is like making an investment into like making that a really great experience for people.
We love to hear that. So soon, Relaunching peer to peer, and individuals are vetted, right?
Yep.
Yes. Yes. It's going to be a great spot. But again, I think that's so smart, right? The internet is that beautiful space where we can find people where it might be hard to be able to connect face to face, right? To be able to connect, to travel, to see one another. The internet is this magical sphere. Well, okay, I know the science behind it, but yeah, right? The magical sphere where we can build something that is just as meaningful, just as important. And it's good to be able to carve out these spaces for belonging. And I think it's really interesting on all of these levels to be able to explore and to be able to present ourselves. I imagine, of course, this was one of the core pieces when it came to creating peer to peer, was like, we want to make clear identifiers. And I like, even when you had introduced like yourself as an example, right, in this space, that it allows us to see the complexity of who we are and the many different ways in which, and layers, right, in which we can identify in this space.
100%. And I think that like different groups find community and build community differently.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of having to like, acquiesce to like what the stereotypical main form of community is, like people can show up as their full selves, and find people who understand them. They don't have to like,
Mm-hmm.
change who they are or shrink themselves. They can be as loud and as proud as they want to be about who they are, and find others who like really love that and want to support that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's great.
I love that, especially online, right? Because online has always been this place where they say, like, on the internet, you could be anyone you want, right? And we say
Mhm.
jokingly, like, it could be a horse behind it or a duck wearing a horse's mask, right? But the truth behind it is it allows us to really construct ourselves in the way that we want, right? We aren't restricted by when people look at us what they see, but we get to choose how we want to present ourselves and what we want people to pay attention to. It's really an interesting thing. And you and I had mentioned it just very briefly before the show, but video games also have been a space for individuals to learn how to practice ourselves. Like in World of Warcraft, right? We can choose to be an orc. Whenever I, even like in TTRPGs, tabletop role-playing games, and D&D, all right, so I never play a human, right? I am
Mhm.
stuck being a human. I'd rather be anything else at this, but it gives us a chance through storytelling, through play, that we get to learn different aspects about ourselves and to try it out to see who we really are. It's a new form of understanding, and a playground that is safe enough that we could do this where others aren't going to be mean or judgmental on here. So we had talked about that, right? Like gaming and this. Talk about what's your thoughts on this? Like gaming and the opportunity to create identity.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's literally like tied to the core.
Mm-hmm.
Like whether it's like from the days of playing Street Fighter, and it's like I would always play Ken and my best friend would always play Ryu. And like but like it
Sure.
matched our personalities and our friendship so much, like
Mm-hmm.
why we were those characters.
Yeah.
Or even things like I remember like playing like Mass Effect as a kid. And like
Yes. Sorry.
no, love that game. It was worthy of the yes. But like, like when you have those opportunities to like make the bad choice and you're like literally grappling with that, and even
Yes.
though there's like no like real world consequence, like you feel that, right? And it's like
Mm-hmm.
those kind of things are like, am I really this type of person? Do I
Yeah.
want to explore that bad side? You know what I mean? In
Yeah.
a safe space to like figure out like how things will play out. And I think that that's one of the dopest things about gaming is it allows you to like really
Mm-hmm.
transplant yourself in a whole different environment,
Mm-hmm.
that's completely safe. Like you're not
Yeah.
gonna get harmed from it
Mm-hmm.
directly, and like you can explore things and different sides of yourself, and like even
Mm-hmm.
just character customization. Things
Yes.
like as simple as that are just like different forms of self-expression when
Mm-hmm.
you really get down to it. There's no difference between how you would dress a character in a video game and how you dress yourself in real life, really.
Mm-hmm.
uh, no one does it the same, and that's a really really cool aspect to it.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And video games have been getting better at it. Like as we go along, like there's some characters where like, I've always seen myself in this. That's who I am. And others were like, I have worked on this character creation for 4 hours and I hate how I look. Like you'll put all this effort into it. And then when it goes into the game, even you're like, that's not how I thought that would look in the cutscene.
100%.
Right, there's certain challenges, or even when I think of uh different characters right now, like some do a better job of certain features instead of just saying like male, female, and like this is the standard for male or female. Like we now get a lot more options, or there's much more of a sliding scale, right, between things. So there's more personalization and recognition on multiple levels of who we are. It makes me think like Hero Forge, which does like D&D, TTRPG
Mhm.
minis. They recently did surgery pieces that came out, and I thought that was fantastic. Right, yeah, it's another way, like when we in character creation or character representation, we talk about video games here, but the same isn't in all medias, right? Just video games are different because we get to have that choice and personalization. But when gamers or the developers behind it create certain assets, it's showing us what they think or what they see in that world. What are options that need to be changed? What are ways in which we express that we are different on that
Mhm.
end? So, what options do we have? What skin color? What hair color? What's the size of my nose or the shape of my eyes that exist in this? Yeah, that's all of these different ways in which we get to say who we are, and it's gotten a lot better. It's always nice at the beginning, right? I've always thought of myself definitely as a sand shrew from day one. Right? That was the type of Pokemon. I'm like, that's me. I am a sand shrew through and through, right? But it's been so nice that as more options come around, that I can choose and create a character, one that either looks exactly like me or one that I, for better or for worse, wish I looked like.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure, and I think that part of that too is that, like, you know, there's an ebb and flow with this, and, like, culture has pushed gaming as well, right? So
Mm.
you can look at, even just how women were portrayed in video games from, like, when I was a kid, you know what I mean? Like,
Very first
uh
Tomb Raider, yeah.
oh my god,
Some of those
yeah.
Mortal Kombats.
Yeah, and now, like, women are people in video games and not just, like, objectified, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
so, or just, like, the variety of skin color, like you said, like, before it would be, like, white, yellow, black, like,
Yes.
and that was it, and now, like, there's sliding scales, there's forms of customization, so, like,
Hmm.
not only has the technology gotten better to, like, allow that, but I think that, like, culturally, there's, again, just been more space for people to say that, like, "No, we're part of this community, and we wanna see ourselves in these spaces as well," and so I think that, yeah, um, like, the developers have done a really good job of trying to, like, keep up with culture,
Hmm.
but I do think that, like, in a lot of spaces, it's like culture pushing back against, like, what the normative, like, talk is around gaming spaces and being like, "No, we're here too, so you need to put us in this game as well." And I think that that's super dope.
Yes, yes. Right. It's one of those ways that gaming gets to help inform society as well. Like we've seen this also like in movies and TV shows, right? To help set trends, to help set conversations, right? Every time a science movie comes out, there's suddenly a sudden influx of STEM majors, right? Another puppy movie comes out and suddenly everyone wants a Dalmatian, right?
Mhm.
It gives a way in which we start talking about conversations, or we start talking about how this is impacted or reflected in our own society, which is also really important when we think about not only is there representation, but how and how many.
Mhm. For sure,
Yeah.
for sure.
As we know, one does not represent the many on their own. And I'm not sure if you felt this, but there have been times where I've been like the only Asian and like, well, what do you think? And I'm like, I don't talk for all of China. Okay.
Yeah.
I have visited China once. All right. So, like, when we think about that, there's always this still continual push to say, how do we keep telling these stories in this space?
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. I've definitely been in your
Hmm.
position where people have been like, "Alright, so, like,
Hmm.
what do the black people think?" And I'm like, I don't know. Why don't you ask them? 'em?
Yeah.
Don't ask just me." But yeah, no, I think that though that, like, especially when it comes to, like, this community, like, that's why it's so important for, like,
Hmm.
having multiple, like, iterations and versions of different types of people
Mhm.
in video games, because I think that like that gives credence to the breadth and depth of that, like
Mhm.
people from other communities are real people with real stories,
Yes.
and we can engage with them the same way that we would engage with stories of like white males, or just even like we view like like Star Wars, or like any story with like mythical creatures is like having wholeness and credence, right? And
Mhm.
so we should be able to do the same with an Asian lead character,
Mhm.
or with a black lead character, or with a trans lead character, right?
Yeah.
And like, just because we're not familiar with the intricacies of that story is exactly why that story needs to be heard,
Mhm.
because it makes us better people, because then we understand people better. And I think that, like, to my point of like not sitting with God of War because it's like a story based game, like I need to like really get invested in it,
Yeah.
right? Some of the best like art that we're seeing from like our time today is like reflective of video games. Like Last of Us is like one of the greatest stories
Mm.
out there, right? And like people loved the TV show and are now like going back and like revisiting the game because they want to be part of that world and to like experience it, right?
Mhm.
So these stories have validity just as much as a TV show or a movie does. And so I think that we need to treat it with the same amount of care and like um openness to representation for like all types of people to be able to tell their stories in this
Mhm.
space, because it has ripple effects now.
Yes, it does. It has a chance for us to inform, to go through and be experiencing through the eyes. Like so we've yeah, as you mentioned, like we there's plenty of video games where we've experienced the stories through a white male, right? So what is now a similar story through the eyes of this individual, now of this individual, and we get fresh takes, we get new nuances, new perspectives that come from that and that insight, and it becomes a richer experience as a whole. You're spot on this. Excellent. I knew we had you on for a reason. No, so it's interesting. Now, of course, within this, when especially being part of the fundraising efforts, your interaction within the gaming community is doing a lot of fundraising, collaborating with streamers on this, and that's really great that the gaming community can provide support like that. But also, I want to flip it. What do you think TL offers the gaming community and can inform and help us become better?
Yeah, for sure. So I think like things like peer to peer, where we like try and help create space for gamers to be able to self identify, is a big one. But
Hmm.
I think just like investing more into the space and like learning from gamers. So like we've recently just hired our first like gaming coordinator
Ooh.
for our fundraising team, which is
Hmm.
like literally the coolest job ever.
My
Um,
students are tuning in like, what?
I know. Shout out Steph if you're watching the stream right now. Steph's amazing. But we that job, part of it is like really like talking to
Mhm,
folks who like stream for us the same way we would talk to any other donor and reach out and figure out how to like build community with them, what kind of
mhm,
events they want to see. And so like we're really making the investment organizationally
mhm.
to treat people who stream for us with the same level of care and attention that we do like a regular individual donor. And so we're really excited to build out that space, because I think it's super novel in the fundraising space. Like
Oh
a
yeah.
lot of orgs don't really like focus on this as an area.
Mhm.
And so it's really great to like be in a space that's so like cutting edge around it.
Yeah.
And I think that we're going to be able to like do some like really cool stuff in the future.
I love kind of the responsiveness. You're like, listen, we've been doing this for years. This is an old trick for us, right? Because, but I think this is important, right? Like very early on, you all were paying attention of where can we build safe communities? Where are these individuals who care about us already at? So where other organizations are like, oh look, we just discovered this gaming community. You're like, listen, we know how good this place can be, and it's worth investing in to continue to make it better on this end.
100%. And I think that that again just goes back to like um the org being of itself and like knowing where the trans community is at and like
Yeah.
wanting to meet folks where they're at. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
That's where the community was built. Trans people have had the opportunity through gaming to like really find community and to do the things that we were talking about, to be able to like live an experience and feel freedom and community, online and virtually. And folks at Trans Lifeline knew that and like were willing to make an investment in that space. And so, like, we're very excited to continue that work and to continue building our community online.
I love that. I love that. Now, I got to ask, whether it's with TL or elsewhere, where is a gaming community that you call home?
That's so funny. So it's actually probably just like my friends from high school.
Hey, that's
We,
fair.
yeah, we, so we used to play Super Smash Brothers in my basement like every Friday,
I love that.
and like just like order pizzas and drink too much Mountain Dew and play video games forever. So like,
Fair.
we're all like old and washed up and like on
Don't,
other
don't.
sides of the country
We're
now. But whenever we get together, like we still like as long as somebody has a semi-working GameCube controller, we'll we'll play a couple games.
That's all
Yeah,
you need. It's like the bare
yeah,
minimum. Well, what are
it
the
really
games are
is.
you playing now? Are you playing Overwatch with them or are you trying to go back and like
Yeah,
let's do the old school like Mario Party or
yeah, we're doing some Overwatch. We'll play some Mario Party.
Okay.
We were doing Warzone. It's honestly been like such a great way for us to like keep in touch. Like
Yeah.
sometimes like the game won't even be like important. Like we're on the game, but like we're really just like checking in, seeing how folks are doing, like
Mhm.
because we don't live in the same parts of the country anymore. And so we don't really get to see
Uh,
each other as often.
yes.
So like this is like our method and vehicle of like keeping in touch with each other.
Mhm.
And like yeah, like you said, like building and maintaining community.
Right.
Where so it's like our version of like a group chat. It's just like we're just playing the game while we're talking. It's like
Sure.
a yeah, it's like a bro like group FaceTime, I guess.
But it's that like perfect conduit. Like it's easy. Yeah, you could probably just do a group call and you can talk and catch up, but
Yeah,
it's about building experiences together, and that's really what you bond over, right? It's the same thing like when they say like, oh, when you're dating, don't just meet for coffee, like go on a hike, go bowling, like do an activity together, and that's where you're creating memories, and then it's not forced, right? It's not a forced conversation. You have something to talk about and you can fill in all the things you want to talk about in those spaces already. It becomes it more exciting, it becomes more connecting.
yeah, 100%. And like there's so many like, memories of silly things that have happened in the game that like we've all been like a part of that we'll just like reference and like things like that. Like
Hmm.
we have inside jokes just from like those experiences alone, like just like if we were hanging out somewhere and something funny happened. So it really is the same thing. Yeah.
Yes, very much so, right? But I love that you mentioned like the basics of community because I think some organizations come in and think like we're going to open up a Discord and people will come in and they will just talk and it's like no. That's hard to get people to feel connected. But you're right, like when we have games, right? That's where we start to have funny moments. Like whenever someone accidentally gets blown up by a rocket or you win something together. Really, it's the bad moments that are much better and worth saving. The victories
100.
are nice. The victories are nice, but
You remember the epic fails for sure.
yes. Yes, exactly. Especially when it's your friend and you get to watch it. Uh, but that's where we start to create a history. And that
Yeah,
history then becomes relationships. Because if it's nothing that's memorable, if it's nothing that pulls us back again, then why do we return?
100%.
Mhm. Oh, now it makes me think of like all the high school relationships and friendships I just haven't reached out to. If only we had video games. If they played video games, we could still be friends. But I think that's important, right? Of it video games can be a nice initial route. Like, yeah, we're going to hop on, we're going to play a game. Yeah, we are doing this community where it's an open like if you're looking for a group, you can join us while we do this. If you have an island for Animal Crossing, join our Discord so that way you can visit different islands to find whatever fruits, right? Like it almost becomes just like an excuse.
Yeah, it's like the conduit. It's just like
Yeah.
a space that allows for human interaction, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like, that's like the really memorable part. It's
Yeah.
like, whether you're building something or losing at something or things that like, it's things that like give you that memory, that emotion, that like brings you back to the game and brings you back to
Yes.
like playing with your friends.
Yes, exactly. Right. It's that beautiful connection and that end. Okay. So when we're talking about community, how, of course, we've kind of talked about some of those initial thought processes of making sure one, like how we handle our hotlines or, the relationships and communities that we build. How does TL build community within this space besides just providing resources or working with different gamers and content creators? What keeps those conversations going where people are like, this is my organization? Like, it's not just like a one time donate and that's it, but I'm going back, I'm seeing what they're doing, I'm following them on social media. How do you generate that kind of long term connection?
Yeah, I think the main thing is, like, really the work. I
Mm,
feel like a lot of folks really, um are drawn to this organization the same way I was, that like
hmm.
this is like a really important organization at a really important time in
Yeah.
like this country, that like,
Hmm.
I want to be a part of this in any little way possible. And so what my job and Steph's job and our
Hmm.
other person on our team, Miles's job, is to like really be able to like help support people in that moment of like wanting to support us and be like, all right, how do we make this easier and a better experience for you to do this again?
Hmm.
And like, how do we bring you like closer into the fold and like
Hmm.
help you understand like how much you all as donors, as streamers, as fundraisers mean to the organization? Because like I
Hmm.
said, we are like primarily built off of small dollar donor money.
Yeah.
And so we really want to stay in tune and invested in our community and like
Hmm.
what they need. So like we really try and listen to whether it's folks that we are providing services for or folks who donate, um, hearing what they're saying, hearing and what we're seeing on the ground is like needs for the organization and responding to that. So for
Hmm.
instance, another program that like um, grew out of the hotline was our microgrants program.
Another
Um,
one? How many are there? Don't answer that. There's too many,
it's-
probably.
there's three. There's three. There's only three. But the microgrants program provides like
Mhm.
direct aid and support to trans
Mm,
folks to like do things as simple as like change your name or get your ID changed.
mm,
Folks don't know that it can cost hundreds up to like thousands of dollars to like legally change your name.
yes.
And so for folks who are transitioning, who don't want to use their dead name anymore,
Mhm,
to get proper identification with your name on it,
mhm,
um, think of all the places that you use that, whether you get pulled over and stopped, whether you are trying to apply for housing or for a job.
mhm,
Something as simple as a driver's license can be like the barrier for entry into education, into the workforce, into housing, right?
mhm,
Um, Being able to help folks with that immediate financial cost to help them improve their lives is something that we've been doing. Also, like helping trans femmes with gender affirming healthcare. And being able to support them with that is something that we've been doing and exploring. So,
mhm.
um, really trying to like stay as like community driven as possible,
Yeah.
uh, and like continue to map our programming and our supports to like what we're seeing in real time.
Yes. Trying to be responsive to all of those needs. When you mentioned the name change, it jogged my memory because I did change my last name when I got married. And afterwards, I thought, after I knew how difficult this was, I wouldn't have changed it at all. I was like, this is not worth it, and his last name's not that cool. For what it was worth, and so right, like if you're doing it, it's important. It means something to you because yes. Now I look back, I'm like, I wish I had chosen a much cooler name if I was going to go through it. So if you are choosing a different name, Awesome. Make sure you like it and make it badass sounding,
Yeah.
because it's difficult. And even then, after I got it, there were still some bills coming in under the old last name, and I'm like, I don't know how to fix this.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So, and then like if you compound that with like if a person is transitioning, you know what I mean? Like it can make it even more difficult to like,
Yes.
and then you're having this constant reminder in your life, oh, like this is the old you is still
Mm-hmm.
the relevant you. You know what I mean? As far
Yes.
as like your government paperwork, your bills in your name, your employment, your ID, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're trying to like really live your best self and like come out and be who you are,
Mm-hmm.
these things can be like an impediment not only from like a just like, oh, this sucks, I gotta go change these bills, but like just from a personal like feeling standpoint.
Yes.
And so, there's a lot that we want to do to help support folks to be able to like go through that process as easy as possible.
Mm-hmm. That just makes me think. So, like I mentioned, like I'm starting a brand new class. I've got all new students in, and their name in our online platform is pulled from their financial documents. And so I always tell them at the beginning, like, if you go by a different name, please let me know because I want to address you correctly. But it is like until you get that changed, like that means that's another, like it is. I send them a form that they have to fill out to change their name in the online program because it defaults to
Mhm.
financial document name. And it's another thing. Like this is they're just starting university. Like it's supposed to be an exciting time. I'm starting fresh. I'm going into a degree that is thrilling and I'm going to invest in my future. And then you see the wrong name and how disappointing. Or I guess there could be a whole variety of emotions. I don't want to pin it down to one, but it's not a good feeling is what it
For
is when
sure.
you see that.
For sure, and that's why, like, this work is so important because, like,
Hmm.
for me, I just have gone by my regular name my whole life. That's
Hmm.
something innocuous to me. Like, that's a bias that I have in my head that I would never
Hmm.
even think of. That's, like, something that can be, like, really debilitating for somebody else,
Yes.
right? And so that's why, like, I've learned so much from working at this organization and, like, how to be a better ally and support better, but, like, these are
Hmm.
just things that, like, you know the way that like things are set up that like for people who are like in the majority group that we don't even have to think about for the most part, or like if you had to change your name it would be like,
Hmm.
oh yeah, well, instead of Catherine is Katie, right? You know what I mean? It might be just something as simple as a nickname, whereas for other people it's like a lot more than that.
Yes.
And so like we really should I'm like really glad that orgs like this exist to help push to be able to like make space for folks
Hmm.
to be able to show up as their full selves.
I love that. And that's like the first step is making individuals aware that these are barriers, these are challenges that exist in what we might consider day to day or normal encounters, right? Like I can't even imagine like how difficult it might be to update your sex. Like it's one thing to change your name, but then like
Mhm.
what documents are needed? I I'm getting frustrated, all right? And I'm just on the very bare surface of this. As I mentioned, I don't my emotional take around these things, I would just start crying at the beginning. But right, there's a lot that individuals have to go through in this space. Gosh, you have such a knowledge base, and I appreciate how much you're sharing with us. I know there's a number of individuals, and I'm telling my students like, hey, you need to make sure you come back and watch this VOD, right? Because you found yourself in a position where you get to work with gamers and you get to work with a cause that is important to you, that makes the world around you better for people that you care about. And what how did you find yourself here, right? Like so I know you mentioned like that you started first as consulting, but like what are the skill sets? Like if somebody are like I want to get to where you are today, what are the skills that I need? Where do I need to begin? How do I find my pathway to be able to be in such an impactful position?
Yeah, I started out like as a fundraiser by accident, really. Yeah, it's a crazy
Okay.
story. Um, I I went to college for psychology, and like all through high school, I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna be a psychiatrist, like for sure."
Mm-hmm.
Took intro to psych, and I hated it. And I was like, "Well, uh, like all right, well, got to find something new." And I
Fair.
I had just come back from studying abroad overseas, and so my major was I just switched my major to international relations and diplomacy.
Yes.
Um, and
It's
so
fun.
my two options were to like either work for the State Department, either like
Mhm.
in the embassy or be a spy or something,
Yeah.
or work for like NGO or a charity. And so I chose the latter route.
Yeah. Those are all very
So
extreme situations for
yeah,
such a
yeah, right.
I'm going to be a
Yeah,
spy or
yeah,
NGO.
yeah. I could have either I in another like universe in the multiverse, I am like James Bond right now, but
I believe it.
instead, I'm here with you.
You just play 007 on the controller. Got it.
Yep,
Yeah.
I just play GoldenEye, and I live through my former self.
Fair.
Yeah, no, I ended up getting an internship at a nonprofit, and I ended up in
Mhm.
their development department. So
Oh.
development is also another word for fundraising in the industry. It's
Mhm.
weird. I don't even know why they call it development, but
Yeah.
whatever. So yeah,
Industry
I
secrets.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I started, I was 17 at the time, and
Oh,
I
wow.
really liked it, um, because I got a chance to like really um, help people
Okay.
who like reminded me of me. And that intrinsic feeling was something that I really like loved about my work. I knew like I always wanted to help people. Like that was like my main reason for wanting to get into psychiatry or potentially be a doctor or whatever. It was like I knew that like deep down I needed something
Mhm.
like to feel something from my work. Um,
So it
yeah,
feels
and
meaningful.
yeah, and I just stuck with it. Our work is really, if you're a good writer, if you can communicate with people, if you're a good storyteller, this is the field for you. It's really not
Mhm.
super advertised. Like it's not like
Yeah.
a field normally that like people start at the age that I started at. Like a lot of folks are people who transitioned into this work from like other career fields.
Mhm.
So, it's definitely not too late if there are people watching this who like want to get started in grant writing or in development work.
I gotta
Yeah,
admit,
those are like
grant writing never sounds very glamorous.
it's not
Thank
the
you for your
most,
honesty.
but
Yeah.
we keep the lights on, we keep
Yeah.
the wheels turning, and it's
It's important.
yeah, everyone kind of has their role in the structure of it. Like there's like the front office folks who are like doing the work, So like for Trans Lifeline, it would be like the people on the hotline, the people doing the micro grants, people
Mhm.
doing the advocacy work, right? But
Mhm.
we help, the back office, whether it's us, finance,
Mhm.
we're like the engine, that allows the car to keep moving.
Yeah.
So it's like a dual thing. So
Mhm.
I really like my work. And yeah, it's been a fun ride so far.
From 17 to now, right?
Yeah.
You're what, 25?
I wish. How much
On the internet, you
how
can
many
be
things I
anything.
do, I'm still 25. Yeah, all right, let's go with that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll go 25.
No,
I'm
absolutely.
25 for sure.
Yes, yes. I stopped counting, and then when I was getting ready to go on a trip, I was looking at my ID. I'm like, am I really this old?
You know what it is too? Between that and like the COVID years, like the pandemic, those years didn't happen.
No, yeah,
So as far as I'm concerned, like I'm 2.5 years younger than like I really
yes,
am. If
exactly,
I couldn't
exactly.
celebrate a birthday, the year never happened.
Right. You couldn't celebrate it the way that you wanted to. No one knew what was going on. It was a blur. Ugh, cancel it all. No, I agree. I agree. But yeah, so you've taken an interesting career path, and I appreciate how you kind of share that it was a little here or there, or like where you said you went this way and you said no, because I especially starting off, there's like this ideal form of like, I'm going to choose my career, I'm going to get a degree, and then I'm going to get the job that I want. Like such a straight line. And more that we continue to hear people talk about their career pathways and how they've gotten to where they are, it's very squiggly.
Yeah, for sure. And I admire the people who knew at
Not me.
16, 17 years old, like what their life was gonna look like,
Mm-hmm.
decades down the road and like stuck to it. So I'm like, y'all had the foresight that I just truly didn't have.
Yes.
I am also like nowhere near the same type of person. So I think that it's always like good for people to hear those experiences because it's
Yeah.
like people always see you like where you are and not like while you're going through it, right?
Hmm.
Um, and so there's so much pressure, especially on young people, to like know what you want to do. Like you have to figure out your plan, and it's like
Yeah.
no one like it's so hard
Yeah.
to like
It's going to
to wrap.
change.
Yeah, yeah, and you have to be okay with that change. But as long as you stay true to yourself
Hmm.
and like what you want to do and like the values and things that are important to you, like
Hmm.
the job, the career itself doesn't necessarily, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but there are multiple vehicles to like do whatever you want to do, especially in like this age of the internet, right? And
Hmm.
so you just have to express yourself and stay true to yourself. And I
Yeah.
think that like everything else will fall into place if you do that.
What a good takeaway. But it is. It's what you did. You knew that you wanted to help people. You wanted to be in a place where you could be a support, a strength for others to help make changes. And so even though like you're like psychiatry, no, right? Your core of who you were and what you find fulfilling did stay the same. And you
Mhm.
continue, like you can always change whatever job title, especially like in some of these industries, like the job titles aren't consistent from company to company, right? Like, oh, this is called like the development department, right? And they're like, who knows why that's called that? They just called it that, and that's what it is from here on out. So there's all going to be changes, and not to get stuck on those particular elements. Give yourself that leeway to be what you want. And I also appreciate that you mentioned like at any point, like it's never too late. You're not too old, sort
Yeah,
of experience. But it is. And if anything, as you continue to move and try different things and you're doing your squiggly lines, that each place, each stopping point is a new perspective, a new experience that you can bring to the table that somebody else wouldn't be able to bring.
100%.
Mm.
And I think that all of those things like map out to like your journey of like who you are,
Mm-hmm.
right? And,
Yes.
like they're all important, even like the really shitty. Can I curse on here? Sorry.
Yeah, you can. You're good.
Okay, even the really shitty jobs are like some of the most formative ones because like for me, I got into like consulting like by being at like workplaces, and I'd be like, oh, I would never do that. This like, everyone hates you, and you don't even realize it, and so I was like, "How can I fix this?"
Yeah.
Like and then that's when I was like, "Oh, I could help orgs, like, not be shitty. That'd be a fun thing to
That's
do."
that's the job description. Did you put that on
Yeah,
LinkedIn for a little while, like in your little bio,
yeah,
like I help
make
places not be
make me
shitty?
less shitty. Yeah.
Yes. But I like the bluntness of it because there are like we've all been in toxic workplaces or ones that weren't as efficient or they kept around people that were damaging to the overall culture, and you're like, why don't you have
Mhm.
the insight to change this so that way your company can fill its mission? I like that you
100%.
just turned it into a whole job though. Like you let your frustration, like I'm turning this into a career.
That was that was my villain origin story for sure.
It's worked out for you great.
Yeah. That might be my other piece of advice. If you find something you hate, pursue that too.
Yes. Let it fuel you. Let it fuel you. But well, I mean, perhaps our generation is more into that because we've been getting more villain stories out there in the media, right? It gives us
Yeah,
a chance to say, like, listen, when you start to see problems, call them out, challenge them, right? Don't fall for the status quo because the status quo is broken, right? It's limping along, but it's not where it needs to be. So when it's shitty, say it because somebody else seems to appear to recognize when something is broken or is willing to change it.
for sure, and I think that one of the coolest things about the internet is like it gives people the power to change it, right?
Mm,
Before, like maybe generations ago, like if you complained about something like a bad experience at a workplace, like
yeah.
you told your your wife or your husband or your boyfriend or girlfriend
Yeah.
or your parents or your friends, and that's as far as it got.
My dog.
Now, yeah, or your pet, right? Now, like any person who's having a horrible experience can like share their experience like on the internet, and there will be repercussions for that.
Yes.
And so I think that like people have a lot more power and space to like recreate things, and like I love seeing young people like really step up to the plate and say like enough is enough in so many different ways, whether that's socially, workplace wise, professionally,
Hmm.
or even culturally, like how we deal with each other about like no, like whatever the old way of doing that, it's dead, like we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
And being a part of like creating something new is really cool.
I love that. You give the internet such a hopeful spin.
I know. I'm trying to look at the good of it. I don't want to talk about the that I can't make up shitty.
Fair,
I
right? It's too big. What are you gonna do? Elon Musk is, yeah, he's just untouchable right now. Uh, but that's the point, right? Like the internet is a tool. As we know, it can be dangerous. We're not going to sugarcoat it. Like, I know we haven't really touched upon it directly, but we know that, especially for trans folks, that the internet can be also very dangerous. We know people can get doxxed. There's hate speech that is on there. They can be targeted for hate raids, right? For a while. And still, in many cases, Twitch still has hate raids that go on for trans streamers, and people will purposely raid and share awful messages. They'll join discords and spam it and try to ruin the communities that you've built so people feel attacked. They don't feel safe where you've worked so hard to create a ground. So it's not hiding that, right? We recognize those things exist, but it also sees that in this, we can also create really beautiful moments.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the more that we invest in building those communities, like the stronger, more resilient they can be against
Mm-hmm.
things like that. You know, um, it's eh, like a lot of those people are weak losers, and they don't really have
Yeah.
anything else going for them in their lives, and choose to like express that in the most hateful way possible. But I think that it's much easier to deal with things like that, like when you have community and when you've built solidarity with other folks,
Mm-hmm.
who are willing to stand up beside you and say, like, no, this is not what we're going for. And so I think that like, there's a dark side to the internet, and especially to like the gaming community in some spaces that is like, unfortunately hasn't been like eradicated, but like it's changed even so much.
Yes.
Like yeah, I remember like one time like
Let's hear it.
I
Let's
was
hear it.
playing modern I'm gonna date myself. I'm playing Modern Warfare 1 maybe. And if
Wow.
you have ever been in uh an old Call of Duty multiplayer lobby. You
Uh,
you remember what that was like, right?
Not
And
great.
then yeah, and my headphone had unplugged, and like my parents like were home and like heard like what was going on. They're like, what are you watching? And like I had to explain like what that all was, you know?
Good luck.
Um yeah, yeah, yeah. But I think like that those like type of openly toxic spaces are like starting to like be pushed back against and disappear,
Hmm.
um not as quickly as like they need to,
Yeah.
but like there's been some progress there. And so I like think that part of that is because like people were willing to like stay and not run and like be scared and like stay for each other.
Yeah.
And I think that if people continue to do that and build community, the same way that like we were talking about representation, like forcing these companies to like do things to like ban these people and like make sure that these places are more inclusive and safer,
Hmm.
um, because we're part of that community too.
Hmm.
And I think that that's important.
Yes, very much so. And I think that's kind of an overall issue that we also see in a lot of social issues, specifically in the United States, right? Like there may be social calls for it, but to make sure that these become lasting, we need organizational help to make sure that we're changing structure, we're changing policy to allow us to continue to create spaces that are safe, to reinforce that these communities exist and they should be existing here, right? Like that's the next step to continue to like, yes, see us and now help us.
100%. And that's that's like why I love about my work is to be able to help organizations build that critical mass and that people power so that, you're
Mhm.
not ignorable anymore. You're too loud to be ignored. One voice shouting in a room is like, going to get drowned out, but you can't drown out a million voices. And
Wow.
so, I'm really grateful to be able to like be a voice at TL, especially being like a non-trans person at Trans
Mhm.
Lifeline too, because I think that it's important. It's like even more important that like we show that like we should be in solidarity with our siblings and like not only just in ways of like just posting
Mhm.
something on our Instagram story during Pride, but like showing up like for real, showing up for them.
Once a year.
Yeah, no, for
Yeah.
real.
Oh, yeah.
Like, just like, the the black square during Black Lives Matter, like, show up, like, be present, like, put in the work, like,
Mhm.
be a supporter, in
Yeah.
more ways than just, like, you know, socially, and that's, I think, when we're gonna, like, be able to change things, so.
Yes. Well, I want to pick on you a little bit more on this because I think that's really the crux of where this conversation is leading us is especially you as an ally. What can you give us as takeaways of like us in the gaming space? How do we become better allies? How do we continue to make sure that our communities and our small pockets that we exist in are welcoming, are supportive? And it can be little things, right? Like speaking up in chat, but anything and
Mhm.
everything. What are things that you're like, listen, these aren't founded by trans folks, but this is how an ally should look then to show community, to show that welcoming. So that way, if viewers come in that are gamers come in that other streamers come in that they see this as a home as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think the first is, like,
Mhm.
using our privilege, to
Mhm.
stand up for folks, especially, like, in moments of, like, abuse or crisis is, like, number 1. Um, you know, letting trans people, like, lead and show as their full selves,
Mhm.
would be number 2, like, giving folks the space to, like, be themselves, and, like, taking the opportunity to, like, learn. Not
Mm.
necessarily just to hear, but to, like, really learn more, about people, about their journeys, um, and not asking questions to like validate things. One of the best things that I learned is like I don't have to understand because it's not my lived experience, right?
Right.
Same thing is like, you know, relating to like the women in my life. Like there's some things that I'm just not gonna naturally understand because I'm not a woman.
Yes.
But like doesn't mean that I can't know how they feel and like validate and support that, right? What matters is that they feel seen and they feel safe. That matters way more than my ability to regurgitate a fact or to like understand some concept or anything like that, right? And
Oh,
I think that
that's good.
that's how you show up. Like, it's not don't center yourself, center the other person.
Mhm.
Make sure that they feel like they can
Mhm.
feel comfortable telling you things without you having to be like, "Well, why do you do that?" Like, that doesn't matter. Like, just know that, like, they feel the way that they feel, and there's probably a really good reason for it that
Yeah.
you just don't understand because of, like, you're not
Yeah.
a part of that community, and our biases sometimes hide things from us that are in plain sight.
Ooh.
And it's not the job of that person to validate their experience or their existence.
Mhm.
Um, them them being a person is enough, and so just see them as a person, and respect that and respect their choices. And I think that those are little things that every person can do every day, to make people feel more comfortable and safe
Mhm.
in spaces.
Yes. I love that. I these are great ways to interact with people in general too.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, just treat people like people. Honestly, that's the main thing.
but yeah, wait.
Don't be an asshole
Yeah.
and treat people like
Yes. I
people.
guess maybe it just sometimes feels easier to be a little bit of an asshole, right? Or we feel like we can take those shortcuts and we're safer when it works within what society deems as normal or acceptable. But as we try to grow and become better people, like that, we need to reinstate those thoughts of consideration of like, yeah, let me be genuine in this. And it's learning to be able to switch that, right? Because in our gaming, like when we play games, right, we like to joke, we like to make fun of our fellow friends, our fellow gamers. There have been plenty of times I've led my own teammates to their death on purpose and then laughed when they fell for it, right? Like, so we can joke, we can be mean, but when we have moments of these vulnerabilities, like if they talk about it, it's recognizing I need a switch. I want to be
Yeah,
honest. I need to listen and being thoughtful in that moment and being ready to be thoughtful and these outlines like be recognizing privilege, following instead of trying to lead that conversation, wanting to learn and listen, not asking for justification or explanation, right? Accepting and respecting who they are. Those are all key things that we should remember and bring out first and foremost in those situations.
100%.
Mhm.
And I think that like by taking those steps, you can make people feel more comfortable to like share and like be deeper in like conversation, but also in relation with you through that. And I think it'll go a long way for like people feeling supported and safer in spaces.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that's such a great takeaway. And I hope everyone's kind of keeping these in mind because we think of this like in conversations that we're having. And it's easy to kind of showcase these when we're on a microphone and I can see your facial expressions and we can relate to one another better. But this becomes harder if we turn off the cameras and we just have mics, or if we lose the mics and now I'm just typing it out. Tone is so much harder to convey in that space. You know, if somebody offers, I'll be honest, I'm awkward in many ways. Like when I respond to me, a lot of things, my default is to put like a GIF instead. I'm like, I don't know how to express myself. Here's a GIF of Bugs Bunny doing the facial expression that I would have liked to do, right? Like, and that's a cheating sort of way. And it's a shortcut. It's a little lazy. And I'm not addressing my own laziness, but when there are moments that matter, right? Like that's the big distinguisher that we need to have. We're not saying like we can't do all of these things. We can't pick fun at one another. We can't, do our healthy appropriate right trash talk that we have when we destroy them in the game, those sort of elements when I beat them in Mario Kart again and again and again, we can have that. But then when it's those moments, being able to turn it off and to be thoughtful of how that responds, because we've probably all been there at some place. I remember when texting first started. Maybe now I'm dating myself, right? So I remember when texting first started and having even simple things like when you're having a conversation with someone and then suddenly they stop responding, right? And if you're having a vulnerable conversation, suddenly you become so uncomfortable. You're like, why aren't they responding anymore? Are they thinking about what they said? Are there going to be paragraphs of text? Are they just ignoring me and they didn't like what I said? And that can be where you're putting someone in a very uncaring position. And that's hard. That's hard to deal with. And you don't know that you're creating this complication because you don't see facial expressions. You don't see other nonverbals. It would feel weird to be like, are you mad and ignoring me? Because that's jumping to an assumption, but we're not offering any clarity to try to make somebody feel comfortable in that spot.
Yeah, for sure. Texting is, oh, I can't tell you the amount of times that I've gotten misinterpreted over text.
Yes. Yes.
So I will second that motion 100%. But yeah, I think like when it's like visual like we are here, that's when like communication is like even more important, like
Mm-hmm.
tonal inflection, how you say things, and then like also just knowing that like it's more likely that you are being misinterpreted. Like if somebody's reaction to what you said is not the one that you want. So like being able to just be like, well, I'm
Yeah.
sorry if like yeah, if that didn't come out the way that I wanted it to.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and that goes a long way with folks, I think, too. Like,
Yeah.
not necessarily being defensive, but just like saying sorry for like being misconstrued. Like it's sorry doesn't always have to mean you're wrong. It just means like I
Mm-hmm.
recognize that like I harmed you
Mm-hmm.
in some way and I apologize for that. Whether it was intentional or not, like you obviously didn't react the way that I wanted you to. And that was my fault, whether I wanted it to be or not. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that that's something that like, just saying sorry,
Mm-hmm.
even if you feel like you didn't do anything wrong. This is a good habit to have.
Yes, I think that's such a smart way because I've seen that in Reddit a lot. Like, I'm not going to apologize because I wasn't in the wrong, but apologies do so much more. You're spot on to say they serve as a means to indicate I wanted a better outcome. I wanted to understand you and I want you to understand me, and I'm sorry that we weren't able to achieve it. That wasn't my intention. Let me try again. Right? That's a lot to
Uh,
compound into I apologize. But apology is already a longer word than sorry, so we've done all we can.
no, and but that's like how you build community and build trust with
Mm,
people, right? If I mess up and I'm willing to own that mess up, even if like it was just something simple of like a message being misconstrued or like
yes.
something being misinterpreted, that's how you know that like you can trust me with having deeper conversations. Because if I mess up, I'm willing to own that, right?
Hmm.
So you'll feel more comfortable in the future being like real with me because I'll be real with you and like accept when I didn't do something right, you
Yeah.
know? So, saying sorry can be a positive too. It's not always like a negative connotation to it.
Yes. Yes. I think that's such an important takeaway because we're going to make mistakes. I'm glad we're kind of talking about the texting. I still don't know what half the emoticons mean. I look at some of those facial expressions and I'm like, I don't know what this means. I've had to apologize many times before because I thought they meant different things. I'm afraid to admit how long it took me to understand what the eggplant emoji was for a long time. I didn't make the connection. All right, like my brain
Yeah.
was
And
not
that's a
there.
big I get that.
All right, thank you.
I use the like crying tears emoji for like laughing. Um but that's like actually meaning like crying,
Mm.
apparently. And so one time something very serious happened and my mom sent that to me. I was like, why are you laughing? And she was like, what are you talking about? It's the crying emoji. So I totally get
Yes,
that.
yes. I feel like there's an internet meme that goes around like when people were first reading like what LOL means, and like someone said like grandma died LOL, and it's because they thought that meant lots of love, not laughing
Yeah,
out loud.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right? Like so like even when I said like I'm going to forget TL, right? But I'm
Mhm.
remembering. I've been using it to teach myself little things, little
There you
things.
go.
But but it works because you go into thinking I need to learn. I want to
Mhm.
learn. And so we listen, we follow, and it comes with that mindset of saying, I do not know this space. I do not know you and your experiences and what you're going through. And I want to understand. I want to
Yep.
listen and I want to be there for you and whatever you feel comfortable sharing, right?
100%. It just means that you're willing to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when you open that door, like people will reciprocate because
Yeah.
oftentimes, like folks aren't willing to learn, or folks are only entering conversations to argue or for validation of being right.
Right.
So like if you are one of the few folks who are like really trying to engage with people who are different than you and understand viewpoints and like better yourself as a person and like be there for them, like that'll
Mm-hmm.
show up. It's true. And like you're gonna make mistakes because
Yeah.
you're not of that community. So like you don't intrinsically know everything that there is to know,
Yeah.
and so that's natural. But if you've shown that you're coming from a place of care, like, people will accept that and work with you through it. So I don't think like for people who are not trans, like to be scared of engaging with the conversation at all, if
Mm-hmm.
you're coming from like a true place of like compassion and understanding, people will recognize that and accept that.
I love that. I think that is such a beautiful note for us to remember. It just resonate with ourselves, embrace with kindness, want to reach out, want to understand, and we're going to be in a lot better place here. So, of course, I want to pull us back to TL in specifically, right? So we're learning how to be better allies. We're learning to be a port. Where can we next see TL in the gaming space? Where can we start to look for like our next events that are coming up so that way not only are we being good community members, but we can be good supporters of your organization too?
Sure. So it's currently Pride Month. We're coming up to the end of it. So we are still running some Tiltify activations. So if you check us out on Tiltify, or even just search on Twitch and search for Trans Lifeline.
Mm-hmm.
You'll find charity streams up of folks who are running charity streams for us.
Mm-hmm.
So you can support there and donate there if you're interested in supporting Trans Lifeline through running a stream of your own. You can reach out to us. Um, there's a contact button on our website, which is translifeline.org again. And yeah, get in touch with us, and a member of our team will help set you up. We run fundraisers all year round. So even though now is like a big push, like we would love to have you either now or even like for Trans Heart October in October. But yeah, and also just like would love to like get in touch with other members of the community. If you're seeing this, if there are some resources that you need,
Mm-hmm.
please reach out to our org. We're more than happy to support or help.
I love that. Yes. Support goes both ways. We can support your organization and the endeavors you do by showing up, donating, amplifying the resources that you all provide. And then you have these wonderful resources that we can give our community members to make sure that they have ways and means to navigate these very unfortunate, complex systems. Remember, you can offer your support outside of Pride Month. 24/7 support is always helpful wherever they're at.
Yes,
Just leave your stream up on something, right? Something that's going on for one of their charities. There's always a stream, and of course, paying attention in October. It's just remembering too, right? Pride Month, of course, is a big push, right? It gives a lot of visibility, but help is needed all year round.
100%. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So looking forward to speaking with some of you and getting in touch soon.
I really want to thank you so much for coming back on here, or not coming back, but we need to have you come back. I will say that. But I want to thank you for being here for the first time, right? And eventually I'll get to say that line again. But I want to thank you for coming on here and telling us a lot about trans life. Lifeline and what you all have been doing and creating here in this space and working with gamers to be able to build support, to be able to tap into the communities and align with values, align with needs to make it a better place, to continue to provide resources like the hotline, which also has informed so many other hotlines, right? 3 others, you said?
So it's the hotline, our
Okay.
microgrants program, and our advocacy program.
See there. Okay, there we have it. So impressive. You all offer so much, and it's thoughtful. I love that you've shared so much about the unique approach and the thoughtfulness in which TL has gone through to make sure that it is a safe environment, that it is a kind environment, and to protect individuals, their information, and the process that they're going through on multiple levels. So cheers to you all for being amazing. And the reminder is it is translifeline.org for the main website, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yes.
And then the peer-to-peer
Mhm.
website will be live in the next 2-3 weeks. That's peer, the number two, peer.live.
Yes, yes. And if you haven't seen it in the Twitch chat, we have 2 resources tagged as well. One is the Facebook page for Trans Lifeline. So make sure you follow, offer support, all right, keep updated. That's a good way to stay appraised of what's going on. And there's also the twitter.com/peer-to-peer live. So that way you can, if you're just following them on Twitter, you'll get the announcement when it does go live and you can help share it out. You can visit it. All of that wonderful details is available for you as well. So stay plugged in. That's the key thing in all of this is staying plugged in so that way you can continue to be a part of this, that you can continue to offer support. These are easy ways. So thank you so much for providing those. I want to offer any last words for us as you think about how TL or the gaming community can continue to work together to create such a better place overall.
Yeah, no, this has been awesome. I just really wanted to say thank you for allowing me to come on here and to like talk about the amazing org that I'm lucky to be a part of. I think work wise, yeah, it's just building a deeper relationship. We really want to hear from the community about things that you're seeing, things that you need support with,
Mhm.
and engaging with us. And we really want to be partners in helping build safer spaces for folks online. And so Peer-to-peer is going to be a huge part of that, but there are other ways that we can help and support and engage. So yeah, definitely reach out to us, and we'll work together to keep, building these awesome spaces for folks to connect and build community.
Hear, hear. That's the key phrase there. We'll work together. We have to be a part of this story to make it happen. So I encourage you all to stay active, to stay in tune, and we'll have a good time from there, right? And we'll get to play all the games that we want to play without being in trouble. Be it Overwatch or maybe God of War Ragnarok.
Yes, both.
Wonderful. All right. We'll go ahead and close out for today. Kafele, thank you so much again for being here with us, sharing your insights and plugging it in. Remember, one final call out. If you haven't checked out the resources that are pinned in the Twitch chat, make sure you're plugged in. Follow them on Twitter. Follow them on Facebook. It's a chance for you to make sure that you know what's going on, what events are happening, and of course, when peer-to-peer goes live. These are opportunities for us to see resources and individuals who have the opportunity to change how we do gaming, that can influence how we see the structure on platforms like Twitch, on YouTube, and heck, even Kick, right? As they continue to grow. These are opportunities to make sure that we're taking advantage of, but that only works if they have the support needed, both in voice and in financial support. So keep that in mind. If you have any dollars or any few likes that you have in your pocket that you can throw out on Twitter, remember to offer that. All right. We're going to go ahead and close out. You all are amazing. We'll see you all not next Monday because I think we have off for July 4th. I'll double check. But if anything, I'll see you then the following Monday. You all take care. Be wonderful. Be kind to yourselves. We'll see you all later. Bye, everyone.